Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we hang out, we talk about things that we love, things that inspire us. Grom, good to see you. Uh, see you soon. Good morning to Padre and Grom and John Doom and Tink. Up to chapter 13 in book 3. Well done, John. Like I'm on chapter 20, chapter 21. So, today we're not finishing up. We've got one more Malazadvent, and the next one is a doozy. But today we're talking about the Liturgies of Lether, the possibly what could be considered the continent where all of the main action takes place. I know John Doom's in book 3, Tink's in book 3. You have no clue what I'm talking about. And so I will just say this will contain spoilers for books 5, 7, 9, and 10 of the Malazan Books of the Fallen. So Lether, you're reading through Malazan Books of the Fallen, and you're like, cool, book 1, get it back as I get a bunch of characters. Book 2, I'm on a completely different continent, but at least some of the characters transferred. Book 3, oh, hey, I'm back on the first continent. I'm back on Getabacchus. Fantastic. I know this place. I can connect with this place. Book 4, you start on Getabacchus, and then you end up in 7 cities, and you're like, excellent. I'm tracking, Steve. I'm following the plot threads as they're weaving together. I know I've got a handle on this. And you pick up Midnight Tides, and you're like, excellent. Where the hell am I? Because suddenly we're with a completely new group of people, a completely new, several completely new nations and states and kingdoms, a new type of magic. The Warrens don't exist on Lether, but the Holds do. What the hell is a Hold? And a new set of gods, a new set of characters, and what seemingly is a completely new story. So, let's talk about Lether. Spoilers abound, you have been warned. So Lether is another continent, and it seems to be trapped in the past. If you pay attention to when Paran is talking in book 1 and book 3 about the Warrens, he mentions how that before the Warrens there were Holds, and before the Holds there were wagons, essentially, right? It's that the development of magic kind of follows the same path as humans' civilization. It goes from a migratory people to a stationary people to one that's spread out and interconnected. And this is how magic works. In fact, that's why Dragnapur is on a, it links to a wagon that is carrying, Corald Galain, because it's this older form of magic. And so when we hit Lether, it's filled with holds that we don't understand, except for perhaps Corald Emerlane, because we've heard the term Corald Galain before, which is the Tisti Andi's magical realm. And we've heard Tisti Leosin, which is the realm of light. Corald Emerlane has something to do with shadow. And shadow is one of the themes that ties all of the books together, right? Because Kellanved, Shadow Throne and Cotillion are the new gods of the High House of Shadow. And it's mentioned that Shadow has been broken, it's been wounded, it's been destroyed. And the Warren of Shadow is just sort of the largest surviving piece of this ancient Tisti realm of Shadow known as Corald Emerlane. Well, we quickly discover that there are Tisti Edur, and they can call upon Corald Emerlane. So, to answer John Doom's question, the Tisti Andii the Tisti are essentially elves. They're nearly immortal. They come from another dimension, the realm of Corald. And there are 3 main types. The Tisti Andii do look like drow from D&D. Dark skin, dark hair, red eyes, but they're not underground. They don't worship the spider, the queen. They follow Mother Dark, so their skin and hair have been stained by darkness. When you meet the Tisti-Leosin in Book 4, they follow Father Light. Very pale skin, blonde and platinum hair. And then we hit the Tisti-Idur, which is, they follow... I'm not going to get into that. That's a huge spoiler. But they follow Shadow, so they kind of have this dusky look to them. And you'll see hints of them throughout the first 4 books, especially in the realm of the Nascent, the flooded realm in Deadhouse Gates. That is actually where I believe Midnight Tides starts. So we see a group of these Tisti-Idur who are seal farmers, and they are dealing with the fact that this empire of Lether is pushing against them and pushing them out of their space. Every year they make a treaty, and every year the treaty is broken. And so, well, maybe this treaty will hold. And it follows a series of brothers. One who I believe you meet in Book 4. And inevitably, through a series of events, the Tisti-Idur become tied up with the crippled god, who is the main antagonist, if you will, of the Malazan Books of the Fallen and Malazan Empire. Shows up quite a bit. So we're going to take a step back and kind of talk a little bit about who the crippled god is. Again, rampant spoilers. John Doom, you're going to need to let me know how I can take my Kobo files and put them on my Kindle as well. But long, long ago, on an island far, far away, Calor, who we've all met at this point in the series, was the High King. And he was an absolute a-hole. He was hated so much by his people that a group of high mages summoned a god from a completely different dimension. A dimension that was actually damaging to the god, and would be as damaging to us if we went there. And he was called to Earth and blew up Calor's empire and survived. This is the crippled god. And through the course of the series, he's a horrible antagonist. He is poisoning Burn, the Earth. He is poisoning the Warrens. He is corrupting people. He is raising up really horrible people to ascendance of power in his House of Chains. In the Lether series, he is the one who curses one of these Tisti-Idur with a cursed sword that keeps bringing him back from the dead, and it's just awful. So the first 2 books of Lether really deal with the fact that Lether is, being an imperialist jerk to the Tisti-Idur and their response, and they eventually take over the empire. In the second book, in Reaper's Gale, we kind of see what happens when the conquerors actually conquer and essentially are subsumed into the culture that they have taken over. And then the Bone Hunters arrive. And the Bone Hunters are here on Lether for a very specific purpose, but we'll get back to that in a second. So we see people from the Tisti-Idur point of view. We see people from the Lether point of view, both those who are sympathetic toward the Idur and those who see them as basically backwards barbarians that should be exploited in the pursuit of imperialistic goals. And it centers around these 3 brothers, the Bedek brothers. You have Hull Bedek, who is very sympathetic to the Idur, and he is one of the main points of contact and constantly sees these people destroyed and brutalized and sides with them. You have Briss Bedek, who is the champion of Lether. He is the swordsman unparalleled in all of the Empire. And then you have his brother, Tehol Bedek, who, if you like Krupp, if you like Iskarol Pust, Tehol and Bug are comedic geniuses. Tehol lives in squalor and poverty with his manservant Bug, and he does it by choice because he is such an economic genius that he may or may not have accidentally, purposefully, almost bankrupted the entire empire just to see if he could. But he backed away at the last second because he couldn't actually push it over to the precipice. So all of these are going on. And then we come to the last two books, Dust of Dreams and The Crippled God. The Bone Hunters are on Lether for a very specific purpose. Everyone thinks they're marching to destroy the Crippled God. There's a massive battle between the Bone Hunters and a group of Kachane that everyone thought were destroyed. And then eventually there's a convergence. And when I say a convergence, I mean so many plot threads come together in the Crippled God that it is impossible to describe them all. And I don't want to, because the Crippled God is just beautiful. But here at the end, we have wrap-ups for Stormy and Gessler, Draconis, Ubala Plung, Tehol and his brother. We have the wrap-up of the Bone Hunters arc. We see the end of the Dujek's One Arm's host. Their story come to an end. Fiddler and Hedge. We see Tak, the younger, as well as Onos Tulan's story come to an end. We see Hood deal with the fallout of Toll the Hounds. And we see the end of the Crippled God. But not in the way that you think. We also find out who wrote the Books of the Fallen. Again, not who you think. All I would say is that compassion is the theme of the series. I don't want to go too much detail because spoiling these four books kind of spoils the arc of the series. But I can say that all of the themes that Erickson and Esselman talked about in our interview, all of the themes that I've been hammering home, they're all there on full display. Beauty, betrayal, horror, and heroism all play out across Lether. Some of the coolest encounters. The Emperor of Coins versus Brisbetic. The Emperor of Coins versus Karsa. The Tehol and Bug. Did I mention how hysterical Tehol and Bug are? Yeah. The betrayal of the errant. The return of the elder gods. Akarium dealing with trying to get his memories back. All of these play out in Dust of Dreams and Crippled God. And I will say, Dust of Dreams, it's a rough read, but I loved it. What I didn't love about it, it's the only book in the series that is a cliffhanger. And there's a moment in Dust of Dreams where Brisbetic is surveying the Bone Hunters. It says something like, again paraphrasing, by the gods, who are these Malazans that would fight so hard for people they do not know? And essentially how they march to remind humanity of what they're capable of. Reminds me of the Tennyson poem, Ulysses, right? Though we are not that strength which in olden days. Yet, here we are to strive. I'm butchering Tennyson. It's one of my favorite poems. But that keeps coming to mind in Dust of Dreams. Also, we have the most heartbreaking scene in the entire series for me. If you've read it, all I have to do is mention the name Bottle. Here's to you, Bottle. I hope you find your brother. So, where do we go from here? What do we take from these series of books and put out into the world and into our games? Well, one thing that is very clear throughout Lether is that Hoofda. Death doesn't have to be the ending for characters. There are so many undead characters running around in Lether that it's really something that you could play with very easily in your games. I think of the Savage Worlds rule for Harrowed. Would be brilliant to use in a Malazan game. Oh, you died? Draw a card. In fact, draw 2 or 3, maybe 1 per rank. And 1 per Benny you have left when you died. That could be a fun one to do. Any of them are a Joker, you've come back as undead. Let's draw another card to see what kind of undead you've come back as. So that's the thing, right? We're playing a high fantasy game. Most of us, we don't have to be limited with death as the answer. Think to Critical Role, right? The guy who comes back as a Revenant. I always forget, mix up Vex or Vax. This is something that is really important that we can be pushing out there. Another thing is to tackle your stories from 2 sides. One of the things you realize when you read through Midnight Tides is that while the Tisti Idor are oppressed and the Lether are the oppressors, it's not as simple as that. It's not as clear cut. So if you like morally gray series, if you like morally gray choices in your games, having multiple characters on both sides kind of helps show, hey, right, yeah, the Idor march to free their land from Lether, but end up becoming what they hate. Yeah, John, I like that idea as well. Other things to think about is, again, this sense of scale and time. So often we like to run our games, and we have all of this backstory, right? All of this backstory, and it never comes up. Don't be afraid to take things off the shelf from out of their place in history and say, hey, in this one spot in the world, here is where X, Y, and Z are. And let your players encounter that which they thought was lost and forgotten. Another thing that I like to point out, I'm going to go back to Bottle here, Stormy and Gessler, parts of their stories. Never be afraid to allow a character to have their heroic death moment. I've got a buddy, Calvin, who every time we play, he is looking for the moment where his character can sacrifice his life to do something really cool for the rest of the group. And I think in those moments, if a character is willing to give up or if a player is willing to give up their character's life to accomplish something, as a GM, it's our responsibility to bend, break every rule that we can within the realm of the world to make that cool thing happen. Because if you're willing to lay down your character's life for something, I am 100% on board with this. So, when the cataclysmic wave of destruction is coming down on the group, and the one character's like, what can I do? Can I burn my life out to shield them? By God, you let him do it. At least in my opinion. So that is the our look at the Liturgies of Lether. Very confused the first time I hit Midnight Tides. Then you go back to 7 Cities and you're like, all right, I've got a feel for this. Okay, now we're back in Lether. All right, now we're back in Genabacchus, and then the last 2 books kind of play out in Lether. So 3 main continents, all tying into one story. Yes, so I'm running horror at Headstone Hill for my typically Hyperborea night. We have a player who is out for a while, and so I'm running the horror at Headstone Hill. And I've got to say, what do we have last night? 4, 5 critical failures? The most critical failures I have ever seen in a single game of Savage Worlds. And on top of that, Tink's character went down incapacitated. And yeah, survived though. The only roll she managed to ace that whole night was her injury roll. So, well done. Yeah, Padre, I do this with Tanar, and as I said, Tanar is heavily inspired by the Malazan Books of the Fallen. Every time I wrap up a campaign, those characters get to kind of narrate, hey, what was our ending of our story? And then they become major NPCs going forward. Sometimes as heroes, sometimes as villains. Even in what's it called? So in the 8th age, the newest age of Tanar that I'm rolling over, most of the patrons for the warlocks and the gods for the clerics are actually characters from previous campaigns. I don't know how fast I'm planning on running the horror at Headstone Hill, John. Mainly because I don't know how long we're going to be playing this. Everybody seems to be having a good time, so I think what I'll do is I'll run the horror at Headstone Hill till our other friend can rejoin. Then we'll finish out the Hyperborea adventure we're doing, the Xenophagy, or no, the Anthropophagy of Zimbala. And then if people want to go back and finish Headstone Hill, I would be more than happy to do that. We've played 3 sessions, and I think they've only made it, or 2 sessions, and they've just wrapped up. They're about halfway through part 1. In fairness, Tink, I would hand out more bennies, but this was like less than an hour into the game, and it all went south. So, yes, the Anthropophagy of Zimbala are cannibals. It is very much based off of the Conan story. I think it's People of the Black Circle. The one where Conan is spending the night in a caravanserai, and the caravanserai owner lets in cannibals to take him into the night, and that doesn't work out well for him. So that brings us to an end of today's Behind the Screen. I did see the question on Twitch's change of policy. I think I want to make a comment about it, but not right now. Not during Malazadvent. I'm in a cheerful mood. But I will say there is a reason why I'm moving to multi-stream, so that I'm doing YouTube and Twitch at the same time. So anyway, I hope you guys are all having a wonderful holiday season. It's actually my wife's birthday today, so I'm going to be offline for most of the day, but I will be back for Savage Universe tonight on the Pinnacle Entertainment Group channel. And we'll be back on Tuesday for what I'm currently titling and everything else, because we spent 3 episodes just on Books of the Fallen, and I'm gonna do my best to do a high-level overview of Malazan Empire, Paths of Ascendancy, Carcanis, Bacalane and Corball Brooch, and The Witness. So 5 series in 20 minutes, I think I can do it. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This has been Behind the Screen, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Have a good one.